Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good day to you. That's depending where you are in the world. It is a new year. It is a new devotional. The devotional this year, 2025, is called Christ Triumphant by Ellen White. And the title for today, God is Love. The scripture reading is taken from 1 John 4:16. God is love, and he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him. God is love. His nature, his law is love. It ever has been, it ever will be. The high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity, whose ways are everlasting, changeth not. With him it is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. Every manifestation of creative power is an expression of infinite love. The sovereignty of God involves fullness of blessing to all created beings. The history of the great conflict between good and evil, from the time it first began in heaven to the final overthrow of rebellion and the total eradication of sin, is also a demonstration of God's unchanging love. The sovereign of the universe was not alone in his work of beneficence. He had an associate, a co-worker who would and could appreciate his purposes and could share his joy in giving happiness to created beings. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Christ, the Word, the only begotten of God, was one with the Eternal Father, one in nature, in character, in purpose, the only one being that could enter into all the counsels and the purposes of God. The Father wrought by his Son in the creation of all heavenly beings. By him were all things created, whether they be thrones or dominions, principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. The Son, the anointed of God, the express image of his person, the brightness of his glory, upholding all things by the word of his power, holds supremacy over them all. The law of love being the foundation of the government of God, its great principles of righteousness. God desires from all his creatures the service of love, service that springs from an appreciation of his character. He takes no pleasure in a forced obedience, and to all he grants freedom of will, that they may render him voluntary service. God is love. God is love, and he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him. To love to love in its completeness, you'd have to be so pure that there is no spite, no malice, no negativeness, no ounce of darkness or evil within you. Every manifestation of creative power is mixed with the sin in the world. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That is the Christ. We know as Jesus is the Word, is the Word. The Word was there in the beginning, is there now. The only begotten of God, the only being that could enter all the counsels and the purposes of God. The law of love being the foundation of the government of God, because he is pure, he is righteous, and we are not. So this term love is a very generic term used by us, but that term by God, we cannot even really utter it, because the love he has, we don't even have a fraction of that. And yet, as it says in yet, he takes no pleasure in a forced obedience, and to all he grants freedom of will, that they may render him voluntary service. He doesn't force us to love him. He shows us his love to assimilate and be the same as the love he shows us. Can you relate to that?